Hey guys, welcome back. All right, so today we are going to be taking a look at the Jayo 3D printer filament that they were kind enough to send me to review. They sent me a spool of PLA, which looks like this. You can see I've used most of a spool, and a spool of Petg, which I used a little bit. So the review today is going to be mostly on the PLA. I'll probably come back and do another better review on the Petg, and then a follow-up with this, and then in the next video about this. Not the next video, but probably soon-ish. We'll see. So where to start? All right, so the PLA, this obviously is blue. And I typically, if I'm buying PLA, I like gray-ish colors, but they sent me blue, which is fine. And you can see I used most of the roll. I did get to test it on two printers. I used a majority of it for something big on the CR10S5, and then I used a little bit on the Prusa Mark III back here. And there's different nozzle setups because the CR10, I use a 0.8mm nozzle, and it's the printer that I use to print big stuff as quickly as possible. So I printed this. Printed an RA7 head here, which came out really, really good. Now, there's some little things here, like a couple little holes in the front and a little bit of soft spot on the back. Now, if you know me and you've seen other videos where I print big stuff on that printer, you'll know that I make crazy exceptions with how I print versus like the cleanliness of the prints. I mean, the print came out really clean. It's a clean, good print, minus those things. I like to print large stuff with no infill and no or as little support material as possible. So this one did require some support material, but I barely used any. I'll show some clips here so you can see kind of like the leftovers. Not very much. So for that entire helmet, this is all of the waste. That is it. It's not bad. And I space out the pillars, the pattern here. I don't know if you can see this, but instead of doing a real tight pattern, I think it's 12 or 15 millimeters. Actually, this one might be 10 in between the spaces. So it really doesn't use very much material to make these support columns here. So that's all the waste. That's really not much at all. There's no infill in that whole helmet. So that's it. That's all the excess. And as it's printed, I oriented it like this. So this end was on the bottom. So it got a little bit of weakness here. And then this was the very top, and there was no infill and there's no support material on the inside. So I expected it to kind of have a little bit of soft spot here. Now, for another video, I'll go into it, but I would way rather do a cleanup on something small like this than try to clean out a bunch of support material and waste tons of filament and waste tons of time while it prints a big support tower, which I don't really need. I would end up cleaning it up anyway. So this is a completely acceptable thing to me. So to me, this is a really, really great print. Now you can see some little variants here in the lines. This is, I used the Prusa slicer to print this, and they have a setting in there where you can do variable layer height, which means that most of this was printed at 0.3mm layer height, which is pretty big in a fast kind of way to print. But then as I got close to the top, I did some variants in the layer height just so I could capture like a little bit of edge details in certain places and make sure that those stayed a little sharper. And so from about here up, there's a little bit smaller layer height. It might be like 0.2, maybe even 0.1 toward the front of the face. Just very handy setting. But anyway, back to the filament. We'll do a review on this later. But as far as the filament goes, it printed really, really well. It had some very, very, very minimal stringing, which happens to me regularly with that 0.8mm nozzle. This was actually less than my typical. I can show some photos of some other prints down the road so you can see what I usually end up with. This is something I can eliminate by changing my retraction settings, but I always forget to do it. And this one was like so minimal that it doesn't even matter. It's like the kind of thing where you just scrape it off with your thumbnail and then it's gone. Here we are at 87%. The surface is looking real nice. Very good print so far. One thing I really like about this filament is that it comfortably printed at about 215 degrees. Some filaments that I've used are as low as, I've had some that are as low as 175 printing. And it's fine. If you know the print setup, it's fine. But I prefer it to be slightly higher. So the 215 for this was like a favorable in my opinion. And doing a review on filament for me is actually kind of tricky because I had really, really good luck with most of the filaments I've used. I think I've really only had one roll of filament that was just bad, that didn't work well. And outside of that, anything else was usually errors on my part, or I just didn't take the time to learn the filament, because, you know, different filaments have kind of different ranges. Jayo is really good about marking their packaging to show the filament settings. A lot of companies do this now, but for a long time it was kind of vague. It would say this broad print range for their filaments, and Jayo is theirs is, you know, 200 to 230. I did 215 and it worked great. Went right in the middle and it worked perfectly on both printers. I printed all the small little greebly bits, these little pieces here and here on the Prusa. All right, these are 78% done, and they seem to be coming out nicely. And I had nice results with those too. Like, also a tiniest little bit of stringing, easy to fix, but this is my very first print, my very first test with this filament. So typically it'll take me a print or two before I kind of dial it to match a specific filament. But overall, the results really, really good. So yeah, the PLA worked great. I would totally use this again. Works nice, good melt temperature, which I like. I will be doing another video on that helmet cleanup, all that stuff soon. So with the Petg, the other one, box looks the same. This is the Petg white. Now this white is pretty translucent, so I would almost call this like it's like a translucent white. It's not an opaque white. So if you were looking for like a white, this is not it. However, this translucent white worked really, really good for a project I'm working on, and I needed to make diffusers for a light, and I bought a stick-on, battery-powered stick-on LED light where you can click it on and off. I disassembled it and I used the actual little light component and the switch inside of a costume piece that I'm working on. And I used this stuff to make the diffusers for the light, to make the light spread out so it wasn't just this bright LED. And this could be a whole video in itself, but this Petg worked really, really good for that. By controlling the different types of infill, the percentage of infill, and the orientation and the pattern for the infill, really, really interesting results when working with this for a diffuser material. Now, and this stuff is really sturdy, and the Petg printed perfectly on the stock settings for my Prusa slicer, which honestly I can't remember what that is exactly. I'm sorry, but it printed beautifully. I'm going to do a full review on this later, and probably a follow-up review on the PLA, but I'm going to print some costume parts that are more like functional pieces with this and see how they hold up. But I have most of this roll left. So far, like I said, all these little ones, I printed probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 or 10 different weird diffuser elements to work with, and they all came out great. So this filament, I like a lot, the Petg, very, very good. Yeah, strong, didn't string up at all. It's the actual, I wish I could get something to show the light through it, but it's funny because I have a light here in front of me, and when I look at it this way, I can see the light shining through beautifully, but I can't show it on camera. Let me see if there's a way I can do this. I wish I had a flashlight, I would be able to show you. But anyway, yeah, this stuff makes really good diffuser material. So for that, great. I'm sure it feels very sturdy. So structurally, I'm sure it's going to be strong. I'll do another review on it. But yeah, it's good stuff. So yeah, almost full roll of this to go. And let's see, on the back, again, they've got all their settings all marked out. Tells you kind of how to set up your printer to work with the different materials, and you know, gives some ideas of just how to run it, which is convenient. Like I said, a lot of printer companies are starting to do that, but for a while they didn't, so that's nice. But anyway, that's it. Just a quick look-see, and come back and talk about this guy later. And yeah, it's good. The print quality worked great. Thank you, Jayo, for sending me some samples to go with. And yeah, I totally recommend this stuff. It was awesome. But anyway, thanks guys for stopping by. I'll be back soon with some videos on Duralumin metal paint, which is amazing. I tried some. Amazing. I think it's going to replace All-Clad for me. So yeah, if you guys know about me working with that stuff, good news. But otherwise, I should stop talking about that because nobody cares. If you're looking for 3D print stuff, nobody cares about metal paint. Maybe they do. I don't know. I gotta stop rambling. I gotta go do something productive. Okay, bye. All right, it made it. Now, there's the only spots that are a little flimsy, which is totally fine. I printed this entire thing with no infill whatsoever, so it saved a lot of time. I did slow this down when I got to this top section so that it would have as few errors as possible. I expected to have a little bit of issue up here, but it's still came out pretty good. This is an easy fix on the cleanup.